Hi, welcome to Call Your Hits, a Storm Wizard Airsoft podcast.
I'm actually going to use that. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Today, we've got Matt, the Storm Wizard, in the studio again with us. It's always a pleasure to have Matt on the show with us. He's a friend of the show, really active on the Discord. For those of you who maybe have not heard of Matt on the podcast, I would say how. He's been on like a million episodes with us. But Matt is an airsofter from the West Coast United States in California. And he is a good buddy, and we had the chance to talk a lot. And so today, one of the things that we were talking about as a lead up to this episode is the fact that where Matt is with his airsoft today is not the same place that he was when we actually talked the first time, right? And in the intervening period, a lot has actually changed about Matt's approach, to his kit and the types of replicas that he's using. And as we were talking, one of the things we've talked about in the past is that really airsofters go on this sort of journey as they go through their kits, and there's not really a lot of information about what that gear progression looks like. I know Pat and I have tried to talk about it in the past, but Pat and our gear progression is in many ways, ancient history, and like it's something that we did a long time ago. Whereas Matt, this is a journey that he's on right now, and I thought, maybe it's a good idea for us to talk about sort of what have you changed, what have you looked at for in terms of upgrades, and maybe some of the things that you were like, oh, people seem to be talking a lot about, this particular thing, and actually that ain't no thing. This other thing is way more important, way more valuable, and so on. So that's sort of the template for today. So Matt,
Uh,
thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on, Phil. I'm always happy to be here. And, this is really, you say that this is an ancient history journey for you, but each week, everybody's listening to you make that journey still with them, right? Like, I remember when dudes on your team changed from a PC to a chest rig, right? This is a
Yep.
thing that, like, it seems ancient, but it's only been 3 years. Happy anniversary, by the way. 12 days, 11 days late, but
Thank you.
years you guys have been running the podcast, and this is actually a journey you've taken with us, with you, that you've taken with Jordan, that you've taken with Ambo, with Frosty, because each of these guys, as we've talked to them through the years, has changed and grown. Like, all of us together as this weird cross global community have helped each other grow in airsoft in ways that we otherwise would not have.
Yeah.
Like you were the one who first convinced me to try a chest rig, and that's what made me want to go lighter weight, and eventually led to me, wearing a belt, because I only wear a belt now instead of a chest rig or a PC. But we'll get into that through this. But I just wanted to point out that it is a great community on the Discord, and like, you think it's ancient history, but you're still affecting each of us on there every day, right?
And I would say the reverse is also true, because if, this is something that we mentioned, as sort of in our conversation leading up to the episode, we were talking about how, the things that if I look back to the, 16 or 17 years that I've been playing airsoft now, the lessons that I learned and the progression that I made early on was very, very slow, because I really wasn't talking to very many people about airsoft and getting different perspectives and different points of view. But thanks to the podcast and talking to different people and then starting the Discord, what that's created is just sort of an acceleration in learning about new perspectives, trying things out, and then not being afraid to do that, because hey, you know what, this other person that you're speaking to, whose opinion you value, is telling you, hey, this might actually work for you, you should check it out, as opposed to looking at it from a distance and having only yourself to think, maybe I'm not going to do that. And I like, if you think about how long it took me to go from my, the Cyraz that I was using all the way to, a JPC and then a chest rig, I mean, that's a huge amount of time. But compare that to the amount of time when, we decided to start looking at HPA versus AEG, all this kind of stuff. Again, a huge amount of time. But for others, they're like, oh, no. And we'll talk about that today. But it's like, oh, I'm just going to make the switch because, lots of people are saying it works fine and I'm exposed to more of it. So I think this is a really good place for us to start. And I think you mentioned, I remember I think the first episode we talked about, like, in the background, like you had your chest rig all set up and stuff like that. Not your chest rig, I'm sorry, your plate carrier. And so what was the sort of order of operations for you? I know you mentioned that, I influenced you on trying a chest rig, but how did that shake out like at the start?
Well, I started out as we discussed years and years ago now. Uh, I started out a relatively fresh vet. I had gone playing a few times with my buddies as a mechanic, and that was what I had on my plate. Then I had a Lancer Tactical that had the EVIC mat upgrades. Right, you
Hmm.
Google airsoft AEG upgrades and you get the first list of things. So I had those basic upgrades, and I thought I was the hotness. I thought I was super cool. Uh, and then I started playing a little bit more, right? Playing a little more. And I was like, man, I just wish I could be a little bit faster. I noticed that some of the faster players are getting the drop on me, right? Like we'll both go for a spot and they'll get around the building faster than me and pop out on the other side. I'm like, well, where can I lose a little bit weight? And then I'm driving to work one day and I hear Phil say, so I threw away my plate carrier, threw it at a homeless guy who needed bulletproof armor. And I put on a chest rig, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try that. So I got on Amazon, I found a chest rig, and I tried it out, and I loved it. Absolutely, 100%. So much better. Like you drop all the weight, just like an inch of cordura from your shoulders and your back and your everywhere. You don't actually need any coverage in airsoft because it's airsoft, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and I dropped all the pouches that I didn't need because I thought I needed them because there was nothing in them. I was just filling space, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and so then I just had boom, flat on my chest, 3 mags, and that was my whole life right there. And that worked magnificently as an AEG gunner. Uh, but then I reached a point where I wanted to take the next step up, right? Uh, and so I decided I wanted to be a little bit lighter. I was wearing the pistol belt all the time anyway, and I'm like, I'm wearing the belt. I have a few things on it. How would it feel if I just moved these 3 mags onto this empty space on my belt? So I did that, and I loved that too. So I just now I wear a belt only because that's the way that my play in my regular skirmish playing has gone,
Hmm.
and my rifle has come along with me on that journey. Started out like I said, the basic mod, upgraded Lancer Tactical, and then I had to decide which step I wanted to take because it
Yeah.
reaches a point in the upgrade progression where it splits off, and we'll talk about that because I think it's important later on. But when I made the switch and made the decision on that route to go HPA is when I solidified my belt choice because I realized that I could fit my tank in my belt pouch and I loved it. It was
Hmm.
awesome.
And like I think it's important for people, to keep hearing that yes, you prefer to play with a belt kit. That's what you do like 99% of your games with. But correct me if I'm wrong, but like when you go to BFLA, for example, you're not just sticking to your belt kit, right? You still have that chest rig. And you didn't I guess my point is to say you didn't throw it away. And if the situation is appropriate, you would consider using that, right?
I mean, yeah, like if I went insane one day and decided I wanted to do Milsim West, where everybody's drinking the Kool Aid like it's going out of style, right?
Yeah.
I might spray my plate carrier over green again, or I might do the chest rig and do it that way. Uh, right now, though, honestly, no. At BFLA, I ran the belt. At Galactic Civil War, it was just the belt. I realized that with a pair of suspenders, I could do an entire sustainment rig. And like this again, this wouldn't work at Milsim West because they go out on 3 mile sustainment rucks for whatever reason. Uh, but having a respawn, a fob, a base, whatever, where you can leave a bag with all the non-essentials that a lot of people carry on them because soldiers do, right?
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, like in my time as a soldier, we dropped weight whenever we could, and anything that we couldn't drop was either mission critical, medical, or sustainment stuff in case we got separated, right? Like there's a reason soldiers carry e-tools and 3 MREs and whatever else, right? You don't need that in an airsoft game, and it took me a little while to realize that I could just cut back so far like that.
Right. Yeah.
Dude, if you have a fob or a ready area at your milsim, at your LARP, uh, which by the way, I listened to the episode with Jordan today. Fantastic. It sounded like the most milsim ever.
Hmm.
But if you're doing those, if you're doing skirmishes, which I want to discuss later, is like 99% of what airsofters do when they airsoft, even if their bigger picture doesn't always show that. It is, as long as there's a place to leave your stuff that you can get back to, if it's on the field, if it's off the field, leave anything you don't actively need on you. Like have your ammo, have some grenades. If you are a bigger class, have your sidearm and a magazine. But most times you're not going to, unless you're a machine gunner or whatever, you're not going to need a speed loader on the field. You're not going to need an extra 5,000 BBs. You're not going to need 2.5 gallons of water, 8 liters, 10 liters. You don't need that
Yeah.
much water on your person, right? You can shove like a little baby water bottle in your cargo pocket, and then every time you die or get a new mission, rehydrate, right? I like a low profile hydration rig. That is something I did at BFLA, is I put on a hydration pack, and I never do that at skirmishes, but we were out for half an hour at a time, and I wanted drinks.
Yeah. But it's really interesting what you're talking about, because like I think, and just as a side note, there's such this uh, difference, this dichotomy that exists between what airsofters think soldiers do and what soldiers actually do when they go to work, right? Like, it's like, oh, they carry all this stuff, and it's like, yeah, not if they can help it, and you can help it. So they would, if they were in your position, they probably would not do that thing. But I digress. I think though, what you're talking about, like having your bag at the fob, and then like, yeah, don't carry your 10 liters on your person of water, just carry a liter and a half or two or whatever. But like, this is an interesting point, because when we're talking about Iron Horse preparation, and we have our own private group that we're having those conversations, there's a lot of knowledge, and I think the word I probably use there is mentorship, right? Where people who have experienced it are sharing that knowledge and being like, hey, don't do this stupid thing that I did. Listen to my mistake, and like, your sidearm, just don't have one. Well, not a problem for me, but like, whatever, leave it in your kit bag unless you need to. Your water, leave it at the fob and take this much with you, like those kinds of things. Or even silly stuff like, hey, that MRE that you have might be really cool, but if you've never eaten an MRE in your life, you may not want to start by having one on that day, because your insides might not like it. But
Yeah, we don't suddenly start consuming 2,500 calorie meals and going on marathon level amounts of, I'm sorry,
yeah,
marathon level amounts of exercise.
yeah,
And
legit.
you're a real bad runner.
But so,
And start that then, because then you get the cramps and like all those carbs all at once. Man, you are gonna have a bad time.
that's assuming you don't get the runs or whatever, right? But that's a different conversation altogether. But like, what's interesting is that it's easy to find, or not easy, but like, if you put a little bit of effort, you can find people who can sort of mentor you for an event like that. But it's a lot more challenging to find people who can mentor you through the growth process of, how are you looking at your kit, how are you looking at your rifle, how are you looking at your upgrades, which again, I think ties in neatly to the whole point of this episode, is to have this conversation around, what have you learned, what has worked for you in the environment that you play at, and how have you applied that. Because the fact that you run a belt kit, to me, is completely alien. I'm like, oh my god, like, I don't know if I could even do that. I could probably get away with that at the field that we play at all the time now at Frontline. Almost certainly could. At a different field, where like at Red Cliff, where we're rucking a lot, probably that wouldn't work as well. And so it's important for people to hear those perspectives. And I think you and I have had this conversation before around like changing, listening to the other person's perspective and then changing your own, or at least testing it out and seeing like, oh, is this person actually right? Like I mentioned to you earlier, the comment about me saying incorrectly, by the way, I will fully admit that switching to your sidearm is not faster than doing a primary reload. And that's not necessarily true. And I thought it was, but it's not necessarily the case. And it's not until I actually did it and you were like, hey, that was faster. I was like, oh, damn, he's right. Like, it's that kind of stuff. So anyways, that coming back to you and your conversation, I think that's the benefit of these types of chats, right? So you're looking at your belt kit, and your belt kit is doing work. Like it's very, very effective for you. And you run your HPA tank on the belt as well. Can you talk about how you have that set up a little?
Yeah, I have the smallest carbon fiber tank that you'll generally see. I honestly cannot remember off the top of my head what it is, but it's a nice little round number, about yay sized, and it fits beautifully into a standard issue USGI medic pouch. So it closes just around the neck of the on-bottle regulator.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then I put my regulator up there, and then I zip tie it closed so it doesn't go bouncing around all day. So this is actually my machine gunner loadout, because you can tell I was carrying a pistol recently. Mm-hmm. And these are my grenade pins. This is where I carry my grenade. While we're on the subject of my belt, let's go through this real quick. Here's my pistol. I'm left-handed, so this is the left side of the belt, right? The pistol, the HPA tank. Here is my Tornado 2 grenade pouch, which does double duty as a radio pouch, because at larger milsim games, I don't care to chase after reusable grenades. I'll just stick a radio in there. Mm-hmm. Glove stuck on there. I've got nothing on the back. You could put a dump pouch or something if you really, really wanted to, but I don't do that. I dropped the dump pouch years ago because I realized that I do most of my reloads admin.
Mm-hmm.
I have over here 4 single magazine pouches with one pocket on it that holds my dead rag for whichever event I'm at. My last one was reflective. And so there's that. I forgot to mention by the pistol is a carabiner, which is where I stick my EG67s, and I'll just click the pin right on there before I
So
go
you
out, and it's immediately available. So whenever I need to,
just haul it
right.
out. Yeah, cool.
So you see,
So
I don't really have like any different gear on there than you have. I just carry it differently because I like the weight there instead of on my chest.
yeah, do you find you need like suspenders or anything like that to help keep the belt up?
On a longer game, I will wear suspenders. That belt has like an inner Velcro belt that I'll wear on my trousers, my regular
Mm-hmm.
pants, and that's enough for skirmishes. But at like BFLA or Galactic Civil War, I wore the suspenders just to help maintain that weight all day long.
Yeah,
Because like
cool.
at skirmishes in between rounds, I just drop.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's similar to the belt setup that I have in terms of like the inner and outer belt. So I've got the inner belt in my trousers, and then I've got the outer belt that if I, for whatever reason, need to take it off, I just take it off, and it's not attached to my suspenders or anything like that. So it just it helps keep the pants or the trousers right where they need to be, right, all the time. So that's your like basically your all of your kit really, because aside from that, and I mean your Face Pro obviously and iPro, which we don't need to talk about. Everyone should be wearing iPro. Like if you're not, I don't know
Everyone
what's wrong
be
with
wearing
you.
fancy-rated eye pro. Don't wear mesh goggles.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
legit.
sorry. I wanted to go through a few points as we go through, and since you brought this up anyway, I'm going to
Yeah,
say it.
yeah,
It's come up in a few episodes. The reason you shouldn't wear mesh goggles is not because your mesh isn't hard or cool enough. It's because other people might be using cheap BBs that could crack into a million pieces when they hit there and go straight into your eyes anyway.
yeah,
Even high quality BBs, when fired from a high power replica, will shatter. So don't
yeah.
take chances.
It's not worth taking the chance. I remember I had conversation with Shane, who was an old member on the Discord, who was a paramedic from the UK, and he used to say, "Well, I'm not really sure that there's any recorded instances of like mesh goggles causing shattered BBs and causing an injury, but like it's so niche that it would be very very hard to find firstly any reports of those injuries, and then secondly if it's not catastrophic, then people might not even go to the hospital about it, especially depending on where you live in the world and whether health care services are accessible easily to you may not actually report it. So that's we tried to find that out when we did that injury survey a few years back, and we didn't really get, or last year I think, we didn't get a whole lot of traction on whether or not that helped. But you're absolutely right. Like it's not about whether your iPro is actually going to stop the BB. It's about is that BB actually going to end up in your eye somehow, and whether it causes catastrophic damage or not, man, I don't want anything in my eyes. So just get
No,
NC, and like there's no excuse because NC iPro you can get from a hardware store and it's dirt cheap, right? If you want nice
people,
stuff or
you can
whatever,
just get what wrap around $2 safety glasses at
yeah,
Home Depot, Harbor Freight, and it has to be impact rated because nails.
yeah, or like my brother actually had an incident as a side note where an angle grinder blade broke and it wedged itself in his safety glasses. So it's like if it can do that, it can stop a BB, right? It's good.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
anyways, yeah. So aside from the iPro and stuff like that, you've got your all of your kits sorted. The only other thing really is your blaster, right? The Plasto Blasto Slinger.
Uh,
And you mentioned like you had that standard like EVIC array of upgrades. So what did that look like exactly?
all right, so the very first upgrade I did was a barrel upgrade. I got a Lambda 6.01 because legit, I Googled AEG upgrades, and the first video that came up was a video from Evic, and he says, you want to get a barrel, and you want to get a hop up, and you want to get a bucking. You want to get this barrel, this hop up, this bucking, and I bought them. And you know what? I can't even be upset. They've all done wonderfully. I bought a Lambda 6.01. I forget what the bucking is now. I've been through a million buckings since. But it
Mm-hmm.
was also a max hop up, which worked amazingly with the gearbox that was in there at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So those were the first upgrades, right? Which honestly, I'm going to say are the upgrades, right? There's your meat and potatoes of your upgrades right there. Is your barrel, your bucking, and your hop up.
Yeah. And I think that often gets lost in some conversations. Ultimately, your air seal is probably going to be the most important, but also the easiest, right? Because you don't even need to crack a gearbox open to do what you did. And we're not even talking about like an R hop or doing an S hop or anything like that. We're just talking, a straight a 6.01. I don't even have an R hop in my gun anymore, right? So like you can do a lot with a good barrel and a good bucking and a good hop up, right?
Exactly. Like you and I were discussing before we started, is I feel there's an inverse relationship between the difficulty and expense of an airsoft upgrade and how efficient or effective it actually is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like starting from bare bones, you have a rifle that you just got at your local retailer. I encourage you to shop local. I got mine at TNT Airsoft in Lodi, California, and those guys still give me patches and stuff. They're great. I love them. They do any work that I can't do myself, which is very little. But the point is, I went and I bought brand new gun from them. Let's say that the very first most effective 100% need upgrade is the sling. It's a 2-point sling. Right there. Improve
Mm-hmm.
your efficiency 30% off the bat. $40 at Sportsman's Warehouse.
Yeah.
Your
40
next one,
American dollars.
yeah, okay. Other places don't have the same gun culture. It's really easy for me to go to a store and be like, I need
Yeah.
a steel rifle sling. There's one at Walmart.
Yeah,
Woo!
legit.
Right. Uh, Sling's your first upgrade, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's cheap and super effective. We don't need to go into it. You guys have had 3 episodes about how great the slingster is. I use a Viking 2-point, but the point is a 2-point sling that's adjustable. Great. It is the
Yeah,
pinnacle
absolutely.
of rifle technology at the moment. I'm not going to say there won't be something cool in the future. That's it right now. Drop your 1-point, drop your 3-point. Don't even look at the 3 points. 1 points might have their place with an SMG, right? But 3 points shouldn't exist anymore.
I'm waiting for the 5-point to drop in like 2026 or
Right?
something.
Like we put a racing harness on and the rifle just sticks up from there.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so
So the sling first, and then you're talking about your internals, right?
then the barrel and bucking, right? The hop up you get from the manufacturer is fine. Honestly, they're fine. They work just great. The bucking is hot garbage, and the barrel is brass garbage, right? You want to get rid of the brass barrels because they can get damaged just in transit. Brass is super soft. Uh, it's great for mass production because of that, but a new Mad Bull barrel cost you 30 USD. I got the Lambda because that's what the video said. It's $60. Do I think it's
Mm-hmm.
that much better than a Mad Bull? I couldn't tell you. Honestly, I did all right for me. I could tell an immediate thing. So the barrel and the bucking, like that right there, there's another like 40% of your efficiency right there. And there's maybe 50 USD. Uh, right. So we've got a sling, we've got the barrel and the bucking. And right there, you've improved your efficiency. And I'm going to say this, like I've been thinking about this a lot, listening to you guys, and I'm pulling this number straight out of Australia, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
where they don't actually have airsoft, because I actually mean down under, right? There's 70% of your performance enhancements right there is the sling, the barrel, and the bucking. You drop a decent hop in, you can maybe get another 10%, but those are going to cost more because now you need precision equipment. You
Yeah.
need precision milling. I got a max because I had too much money in my pocket at the moment. Uh, Looking back, a lot of people use the plastic rotary hop up that comes with it. If it holds hop, it doesn't matter, right? If it holds the bucking properly, if you've got a good air seal in the rear, if you're bucking in your barrel, it's okay if your hop isn't as nice. I'm not gonna say I don't love a precision machined hop up, but they've got a lot of sharp edges. And from there, you have to make your decision, right? This is when I was listening to you guys and had to make my decision. Is you can branch off from here. You either have to go upgrade as an AEG or upgrade it as an HPA, right? Uh, and because your stock gearbox isn't getting you to a certain point anymore. And
Yeah,
this is where it
exactly.
starts to get really expensive. But this isn't something you should be looking at in your first year, even like first year and a half, maybe 2 years of airsoft, because you won't know what you don't know. You won't know that you want a longer, more consistent shot so that you actually want to get an HPA engine and put it in your gun, or you won't know that you need stronger gears to get that same thing from an AEG, uh, or you won't know which parts go together right or how you want to do it right. Like if you want to go AEG, you have to lipo it. You want to MOSFET it. You want to upgrade your gearbox. If you go HPA, you need a regulator. You need a tank. You need a line. So either way, it starts getting expensive, and you need other parts from here. But those first things we talked about, right? The sling, the barrel, the bucking, the hop, you're 70% of the way there now. And
So
that's less than $100 USD.
yeah, so how does your experience, can you talk a little bit about how you got there yourself? So you mentioned you went and you got the sling and then you had those upgrades. And you mentioned, and I think a very fair point, which is that, within your first year, you don't know what you don't know. And, listening to Jordan, for example, his first game going out and where he is now, it's like night and day. And you're only talking about like 18 months or 2 years or whatever. So how did you experience that? So you hit the field, you're doing this thing with your rifle before you hit that decision point, right? Before you hit the point where you're going to branch off either, HPA or AG, gearbox, all that stuff. How did you experience that? Like, what was that like for you?
Well, it got to a point where I was playing airsoft a lot more often, where I was practicing my fundamental skills like ready ups and shoulder transitions, where I was doing everything in my power to make me better at airsoft, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I got to the point where it wasn't my gun holding me back, where it was like, because I wasn't as good as my gun yet.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. No, it took years of playing, or months of playing, and then eventually a year, and realizing how I like to play my play style, the way I wanted to do things. Before I realized that the gun I had wasn't quite reaching the desire I had for it to be at, right? Before I realized that the little bit of wind up before I fired was irking me, and my first thing was I changed to a high torque motor. I bought my Lancer Tactical Pro line was not the cheapest starter rifle, but it came with a metal gearbox, came with metal gears, it came lipo ready with a built-in MOSFET, so I didn't have to worry about any of that crap. Boom, high torque motor right up in the grip, and it halved the reaction time. I was getting to the point where I needed, between a piece of cover to another cover, I was moving fast enough that I needed 4 shots instead of 3. And
Mm-hmm.
like, that sounds crazy, it sounds insane, but if you play a really intense CQB game, you'll have those moments where you're like, I just crossed that, they crossed there. If I could have had a extra shot in that space, maybe I would have had it. And so I was playing a lot, and I was like, I want to take the next step. I need to go better. And I was listening to you and Pat talk about upgrades. You had the wonderful series of upgrading, like basic airsoft upgrading at the beginning of the podcast, where you're
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, you need to do these air seal parts, right? You guys had different thoughts than me, but eventually it boiled down to the same thing. Uh, and then it got to, now let the fairy dust out of your mech box because it's not real. I accept that. And then look in and decide to re-shim your gears. I'm like, no, no, I am not. I don't care about shimming anything. This is something I do in work as a vehicle technician. I hate shimming. I don't want to shim at all. So I went to
Yeah.
the airsoft store and I said, I am not opening my mech box. What do I do? And they said, how much money you got? And I said, I have too much in my pocket. And they said, get a Fusion. And I said, here we go.
Yeah. So the fusion engine is, I think, the one of the base, not, I mean, not basic, but certainly one of the main entry points for HPA, right?
Well,
Like a Polar
it's
Star
super easy.
fusion. Yeah.
It's a full replacement. Like other HPA engines, you have to pull. You still have to open the mech box, the
Yeah.
gearbox, and pull things out and replace things. The Fusion, you don't. You pull the whole gearbox out of your freaking blaster. You take the new Fusion, boop, pew, you put a grip line in on your way because you're not foolish, and you do the upgraded grip line.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've seen the other ones tear through because people leave their rifle lying down and it'll kink the grip.
Yeah.
Uh, and that was it. I needed somewhere else to go, and I glossed over the period where I shot an HPA pistol because I wanted to feel some clackety clack, and then I had the tank lying around, so that's why I bought a Fusion.
Gotcha.
Because that might not apply to everybody. Side note, this did happen. Sorry, I had a high kappa. I love pistols. I think they're great. I don't ever use one except as a primary when I'm running super CQB games. But I had the high kappa, and somebody gave me the HPA adapter. And I'm like, you know what? I've got M4 mags out the wazoo. I bought the cheap aluminum tank, the one that Pat gave you.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I bought the same a line that's the one Pat gave you, and I ended up giving that tank and line and reg to my best friend when I grew up a little bit and went into my own airsoft, my own HPA stuff. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I believe that what Pat did was the right thing, because when you have a good thing, you want to share it with your friends, right?
Yes.
And
Get them
I was
addicted to the same stuff that you're addicted to.
I just want you, and like for me, it's Drew, right? I want Drew to enjoy it the way that I realized there's this next step, and it is so much more fun. But it's not really.
Mm-hmm.
I perceive it that way. It's maybe, and I'm saying this again, go on the record, put it in the Storm Riders lore. Matt the Storm Wizard is saying you get maybe a 10% increase at that point, that branching point, right? Going to HPA will give you 10%. Upgrading all the way to AEG will give you 8%. We can argue till we're blue in the face about why I believe that HPA is better than AEG. But the reality is you can't argue that a winding motor is always going to take more time than the solenoid just going.
Yeah, for real. But at the same time, and the increase that you get also depends on your starting point, right? Because if
Oh,
you are,
absolutely.
like you started with a Pro line, which is not the cheapest starter replica, the gain that you're getting is probably not as great as someone who's like, okay, well, I just had this G&G Raider, and I'm going from that to, okay, I'm getting a full metal body, I'm doing a drop in HPA or whatever. Like they're gonna feel like, oh my god, it's like night and day for sure, right?
Oh yeah.
But when you dropped the fusion into your replica, did you have any issues at all with like nozzle alignment or anything like that when you started tweaking with the HPA stuff?
Yeah. Nozzle alignment, because I had, as we discussed earlier, a max, and
Mm-hmm.
unless you have the fusion specific max, they do not like to work together. And I lined it a little, and I got a shim, and I put the shim in there. It's easier to shim the whole thing, by the way, than it is to get in your gearbox and shim your gears. So either way, it's just a washer
Mm-hmm.
that goes to the back. But it wasn't quite doing it, so I switched back to my original plastic hop up for a while, and that works perfectly well. That worked perfectly well. I recently gutted that whole system and stuck my fusion in a machine gun, but we'll get into that later. Uh, so yeah, I did have a little bit of issues, but then I had, after taking it apart and putting it back together a few times, it sort of seemed to settle itself, and it tore through a bucking every 5,000 rounds, but I didn't care because I was shooting lasers and it shot as fast as I wanted.
Yeah. And and I think that's an important thing that people need to understand. It's like, well, and I've heard this and I've experienced it. Like HPA is not necessarily plug and play, and it's not necessarily straightforward. Like right now in my garage, I have my replica, and I know that I need to shim it a little bit to get that nozzle alignment to get better and all this kind of stuff. But that's not any more or less finicky or complicated than shimming a gearbox or an AEG gearbox, I should say, or anything like that. It's just different, right?
Yeah, no,
But that's part of that upgrade process and that upgrade curve for newer players as well, is understanding like it's not, once you crack open the gearbox, you're not letting the fairy dust out, because that's not a real thing, but things get vastly more complicated, right? Like
yeah,
it's really, it's not opening Pandora's box, but there's going to be a lot of learning opportunities, let's call it, right?
yeah,
So
exactly.
what did that look like for you?
Uh, well, it looked like I had to shim and stick some things together. I in my job, I'm a technician on EVs, electric vehicles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, when I tore all that open, it didn't look all that different until I got to the gearbox, and that's why I decided I want to wander off and do other things.
Mm-hmm.
But I do in my day to day job align air compressors with systems that need them to be aligned properly to get these heavy duty trucks. They're electric yard trucks that I work on. Everything has to be just right for these enormous 16-ton monsters to pull trailers around yards with a dental air compressor, because it's the only thing that'll work on the voltage we run. Uh, and so, yeah, it's actually not that far off working on the HPA system than it is like looking through parts of my trucks and being like, okay, here. We don't use gears, though. We don't shim gears. We don't do any of that. I didn't want to bother with that. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you were right, though. I took a shortcut. I bought the Pro line right off the bat. And people will say all sorts of stuff about Lancer Tactical. And yeah, their Gen 1s were hot garbage. You could break them in half in your hands. Since then, they have beautifully cloned VFC for a package that is much cheaper, fits all the upgrades just as well, and has lasted me like a freaking champ for 3.5 years so far. 4 years. I had it before I knew you. I just keep thinking back to then, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so getting the alignment and everything with the fusion was not hard. I Googled it, put this shim at this spot, give it a shot, see if it works. Yay, it works.
Perfect.
Uh, and it was honestly a lot easier than trying to shim. For me, personally, it was easier
Trying
than
to shim
trying
a
to shim a
gearbox,
gearbox,
yeah.
because I didn't want to move the gears back and forth. And honestly, I don't. It worried me. Like I didn't want to tear teeth off and everything. Uh, and I was already at the peak of gearbox technology as far as I could get. Right, like I could have put in No, I couldn't have changed my spring. I was at the limits for our field. I was shooting 395 every single day with .25s, which is the limit for CQB City. Uh, they have a different limit for HPA and electric because they're silly. But that should
I
tell
was
you how
gonna say that. Okay, but yeah, fine, whatever.
much I prefer my HPA over is that I still made the difference because now my when I had my fusion rifle set up, it was shooting 349, 349, right?
Mhm.
Because literally like goes from 1.42 joules to 1.86 joules because you're using an AEG because reasons. I don't know. They also only allow 2.5 BBs, and I've grown. Honestly, I've grown a little bit of. I've grown above it. Right. I don't want to shoot 2.5s. The heavier BB that you can hop, and if you're running HPA, you can hop whatever the heck you want. If you're running an AEG, 32 sounds like a generally good number. Run the highest weight you can hop and can afford, because that'll just give you better range overall. Right. Like it doesn't matter if it's moving a little bit slower. It's the same amount of energy the BB's going the same distance, except that would be in a perfect world where there was no wind resistance or anything. So your heavy one's going to go better.
So actually, so this is a great point, and I meant to ask you about that when you brought up the 0.25 BBs or whatever. But I'm curious for you how you experience that, because if you're anything like like a regular airsofter, you probably started with your 0.2s or 0.25s, whatever is sort of the standard. At what point were you like, did you realize, oh, hey, hang on, maybe I want to be shooting heavier BBs? Like, how did you, and I guess the question I'm asking is, how did you know? Like, what was the thing that you're like, oh, wait a minute? Because you're right, like, they go the same distance, right? They travel slower or whatever, but ultimately it's the same sort of thing. But what was the moment that you were like, oh, this is why I need to be shooting heavier BBs?
Well, I went to play at a different outdoor field. There was, and that was my takeaway from that. I went there and they had a different rule set. They did joules instead of FPS, and they let you use whatever weight BBs and so on and so forth. And I had a buddy who had his gun set up for 3.2s, and he gave me that, and it was shooting like probably another third the distance of mine, like 150% the distance that I could shoot with my 2.5s, because I had all I ever played is CQB City. All I had were 2.5s. Now I
Mm-hmm.
keep several bags of 3.2s in case I decide to go play at All Patriot Airsoft in Galt, California. Let me know if you want to play there. I'll play with you. Uh, anyway, so there I learned, I realized that the different weights did matter, right? Like, because you guys had mentioned it a few times, but I noticed it always kind of just like it came up and then it would get brushed over. Uh, so here's another beginner point, because I have a list of beginner points we're hitting here, right? I love it. Is this is important? Is the BB weight? Because the wind won't affect your BBs as much. Brush, ice, snow, whatever, rain, everything else aside, the wind will not push your BB as much if it's heavier, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just it.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, there's a
belt is
reason that people
six.
using precision like bolt actions and stuff are using like 4 O's or higher, right? 4 8s, because that's how you get that accuracy at that longer range. Now, of course, they're shooting like much hotter than us as riflemen, but even still as a rifleman, like right now, like I've been shooting point threes for forever. In the past, I've used 3.2s. Now I'm looking at using 3.6s and seeing what that does. Um, the only drawback I would say would be cost, right? So did that factor in for you as well? Like, did you look at that and go, man, like that's expensive? Or because I mean, I don't really know what BB costs are like in the States, but I mean, you can certainly talk to that a bit.
Yeah. I mean, you do see the increased expense in BBs. There's no doubt about that. Like a 2.5 is half the price of a 5.0, which only snipers use that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
No, actually, they get vastly more expensive once you get past 4 because they're all specialized super accuracy crap. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but no, like it is. It's just like it's a steady progression until you hit 4, and then it goes higher. And I just saw 32 as like a happy medium, right? Like I have a mid length rifle, uh, and a lot of people recommended 32s for a 366 or 363 to 366 millimeter inner barrel. Translates to like a 16-inch outer barrel. I don't know why we do it that way. Figure it out. Uh, but a lot of people recommended 3.2s at that size, and it seemed to be like a good happy spot between. I needed more performance than the 2.5s were giving me
Mm-hmm.
when I go outside of CQB City, but I also didn't want to drop huge bank. Like there'll never be a day where I'm like, I'm going to go ahead and get a bag of 4.5s because my fusion can hop them up. I shoot too much for that, right? I
Yeah.
go through thousands and thousands of BBs a game. And right now I'm paying like $35 for a bag of 5,000 3.2s, bio tracers, because we play nights, we play indoors, uh, and bio is just like everywhere around here requires, right? So these are the most expensive type of BBs, bio tracers. But I can't. I can do the $35 every game for a bag of 5,000 BBs. I cannot do $45 for a bag of 4,000 BBs every time, because it adds up and it goes down. And you're like, because also, like, as you go higher in weights, it's not just the BB count will go down because they sell them by weight. And you'll see like
Yeah.
half a bottle compared, and you're like, I don't want to pay twice as much money for half as many BBs.
Yeah,
So
you're
32
spending more money for fewer shots. Yeah.
exactly, right. So 32 seemed to fit in like a happy spot for me. Obviously, most of
Gotcha.
my stock is still 2.5 because CQB City is 15 minutes down the road, and All Patriot Airsoft is an hour and a half down the road.
Hmm. So definitely, I think huge beginner point. And it's good to get people's to consider that, like, if you're playing indoors, like, yeah, you might not get wind resistance indoors or whatever, but still, like, you are there is a ballistic profile to a projectile, and there is an advantage to shooting a heavier projectile, as heavy as you can get. And I mean, the difference between a point two and a 2.5, I mean, is okay. And indoors, probably, is, maybe a small, to use some random numbers I'm pulling from Australia, let's say 5% difference. But going from a 2.0 to a 3.2 outdoors is like night and day, right? In
Oh
terms
yeah,
of,
100%.
like, just brush penetration, everything else, like, is huge. So definitely a fair point there. The other thing too, and I meant to ask you about this as well, because we talked about, like, your upgrades and your HPA, and obviously with HPA, no problem hopping your 3.2s or whatever. What are you using for an optic? Given, like, so you're using 3.2, so you have, what would you say, if you had to, wild ass guess, like, what is your engagement range, your like effective range with your replica currently?
I'm gonna say probably between some, and I'm gonna ballpark this because I hate when people try to be super exact. I did this for years. I'm still not that great at judging distances, but I'm gonna say 50 to 70 meters was my whereabouts I can get with a 2.5, right? And then
Right.
if I do a 3.2, I'm looking at maybe 60 to 80, right? So there's
60
a
to 80,
definite,
yeah.
you notice the difference, right? But it's still airsoft.
Yeah. And so when you're thinking about those longer ranges, I mean, you're talking about 80 feet is what, like 200, 80 meters is like 240 feet or something like that. I think. Yeah. Um, are you using a magnified optic now? Like, what did you start off with on your replica? Presumably irons, and where did you go to?
It had cheap plastic pop-up irons, and I bought a, honestly, I got on Amazon and I looked for like a holographic site, and I found one that I kind of liked, and I
Hmm.
got lucky with that one because it's like a $20 reflex holographic. It's just like a random Amazon site. It has like four different little settings. I do not use a magnified optic on this gun. I don't. I'm not gonna say I have like great eyes or anything, but I've never shot beyond my ability to perceive my BBs,
Right.
except in like low light environments, and we all run tracers, so it doesn't matter. On the LMG, I've got about twice as much barrel, and I plan to be hopping much heavier things. I'm going to put a magnified optic. I'll probably do like a 2.5 of some kind on there.
So when you think about beginners, I mean, we've talked, and I mean, I don't want to talk to optics to death because we've talked optics to death on the podcast, but I think as a beginner coming into it, like, that, like, the perception often is, oh, I need to put that on there because it will make me more accurate. But when you look at that critically for you, probably not what you experience, right?
No, and like most, I'm just going to take a guess here, but most new airsofters are very young, and they've got good, sharp, long range eyes, and they're not going to see further than their BB goes. Even with, honestly, when I was younger, with the eyes I had then, I would be able to see as far as any of like anything I own airsoft wise goes, my sniper rifle or whatever. Which
Mm-hmm.
I want to make the point also while we're here. I don't necessarily think a bolt action sniper rifle is any more accurate or consistent than a well tuned HPA semi automatic rifle or even an automatic rifle of the same kind. And I think it's silly to pretend like because in real life those platforms are more accurate. In airsoft, that's also true.
Yeah, you
Moving
see
on.
that a lot.
You do see that a
Yeah.
lot. You hear that a lot. Uh, some ogres tend to discuss that a lot. And I kind of want to be like, yo, bro, why do you think this?
Hmm.
Uh, Because in the real world, the stability of a platform like that is different than the stability and build of a gas blowback operated firearm, right? But it's not an airsoft. It's
Yeah, if you think about, like when you look at the really expensive bolt action setups, typically the any sort of performance gain that you will see on them comes from the fact that they're using much better, more precise, more aligned, better air seal parts and all this kind of stuff. And then like in that particular context, that rifle that you've spent, thousands of dollars on, is it more accurate than your pro line? I mean, probably, right? But um is it going to be necessarily more accurate than an equivalent rifle setup with similar parts? Like probably not, right? Because
no.
if you're comparing apples to apples, then it should be pretty similar. The difficulty, I think, is that in airsoft in particular, people are never comparing apples to apples. So they see someone's bolt action rifle, or they see like Novrich or whatever out there on YouTube. They're like, oh my god, bolt action rifles are so accurate. Well, yes, that one in particular is,
Right,
but when you go to Evic and get your $200 like Ares M4 or whatever,
right.
it's not the same, right? Like, yeah,
Like you haven't. The guy at Evic isn't sitting there spending 100 hours on his sniper rifle so that he can go make super cool headshot compilation videos and get
yeah,
flying
exactly.
around the world to buy his patches. Right? He doesn't need to do that. He has a job at Evic. He can just sell you the crap.
Yeah,
Uh, but Nobrich has to make those shots. He has to show that So he's probably spent the time or spent the money on the tech to have the time to really dial in those air seal components because like the nozzle goes to the hop, goes to the bucking, goes to the barrel. Behind that doesn't matter. Uh, Whether it's a bolt or it's a fusion or it's a big ass spring on a tube, what gets to this point is air, right? So it's the air seal parts, guys. It's all the air seal parts, right? A sniper rifle, a bolt action isn't more accurate than an M4 because it goes like this.
yeah,
It's really just another part for you to break with your big stupid hands. It's more accurate because they make more precise parts in there because there are YouTubers who do that and need those more precise parts. If you could get those precise parts to work in your M4, and there's no reason you couldn't if you really felt like it, you could get the same range and accuracy out of an HPA because it's air.
yeah. And
Not
it's funny because like I think back to when Pat and I were working on the bolt action rifle that we had back, in 2009,
Oh, you
right?
had a 96, right?
Yeah, and it was hot garbage. But like at the time, the precision chamber that they had for the hop up, they didn't make those types of precision like the max hop ups that we have now. They're like precision CNC machine. Those did not exist at the time. So if you're like, oh, well, this is a precision chamber that doesn't exist for an AEG, you are correct in 2009. But it's 2023, bro. Like you're saying, there's a lot of precision parts that exist, and there's a lot of potential for you to make that rifle. Anyways, I'm digressing here because I think ultimately when it comes to beginners, and I think this is sort of the point that you're making, like the the bolt action rifle, like you don't need to be more or less in awe of that as a precision platform as your AEG, your HPA, whatever. Because if you put the time behind it, you can get it there, right?
Exactly. Like, and this is a point of contention we often have on the Discord server with some of the other guys. Is I am way into using guns for whatever you feel like using them that day. Like, I don't care if you have a fully automatic high kappa that you want to run as an LMG, as long as you stay at the 25-foot minimum engagement distance and you mount it before you start on full auto. I don't care. Go for it. If you think you can run a high kappa as an LMG, sure, go for it, right? And I like that everywhere across the board. I want people to be able to play with their toys the way that they want to be able to play with them within, the rule set. I don't care what they look like.
Yeah.
Uh, and so there's no reason to like look at the sniper rifles and think that that's what you have to do for sniping unless you're going to a milsim event where they only allow you to be at to have heavier ammo or to have that jewel level at muzzle velocity in the bolt action sniper rifles for thematic reasons. Then sure, yeah, whatever, cool. But honestly, dude, if you do skirmishes, which if we sit down and think about it, 90%, 95% of airsofting every day is, you don't need all that extra.
Yeah, that's 100%. It's we talked about this before, but I think there's that disconnect between what airsofters often think airsoft is and what it is in reality, right? Like you think you make airsoft out to be this really big thing, and like it's if you want to LARP and you want to do an impression kit and stuff, more power to you, as we say, like fill your boots, right? But the reality of the gameplay doesn't actually care what you care. It is what it is. And so, to your point, like if you want to hold a point with your pistol or your rifle or a shot, it doesn't matter, right? Like that's the game that you're playing right then. Whatever scenarios you make up in your head don't necessarily translate to the reality. And I think a lot of beginners really get caught up in that. I've seen so many like newer players at the field being like, "Oh, I've got this M4 or an M4, as Glick would say.
Jordan.
Uh,
Or
and I threw a 20 times magnifier on it, and I got a ghillie suit, and now I'm a sniper. I'm like, yeah, but that's you've just changed your form, but your function is still identical. Like it's this, you're still doing the same thing. You've just complicated your gameplay now for a reason that seems cool to you, and that's fine. But your performance hasn't changed, and I think people lose sight of that. Like it's okay, like you're saying, people should play however they want to play, but don't kid yourself about things actually having changed in terms of the gameplay. Like if you want to hold that point and pretend that your pistol is a machine gun, great, but unless you got a drum mag on there, it's probably not going to last very long, right?
but I have a drum mag on mine, Phil.
Well, I know you have your drum. But you're a special use case. I'd
Uh,
say for the average beginner who sees you at the field is like, does that guy have a drum mag on his pistol? And you're like, yeah, I do, because this is a machine gun. Get used to it, baby.
exactly. Well, it's kind of fun. Like, if I decide I want to go house to house, like I poured all my ammo in my drum last time I played, and I've got HPA adapters for all my pistols, right? So I'm like, I have to go inside. I just drop my machine gun outside, and clack that on, and then I've got my 3,500 round drum, and I'm just like, pistols, guys. Which,
Mm-hmm.
by the way, is where pistols are useful. Uh, if you're a rifleman, leave the pistol at the fob or save it for pistol games. If you're a machine gunner or a sniper, then it's always good to have those.
Yeah, yeah. I think a pistol is a pretty natural. I mean, I could be wrong, but definitely in my experience, pistol is a pretty natural upgrade as new players are getting into airsoft. Is like you get your primary and then you get your secondary for whatever reason. And the reality, as you talked about, is that it's more useful in your fob bag, right?
Well, it's because when we all get into airsoft, and we're coming full circle back to the beginning of the episode, which is super fun, right? When you first come into airsoft, you look at the players and you don't see the guys who have been playing for 10, 15, 20 years in their old gear that fits comfortably and works really well. You walk in there and you see the 10 Jockos over there in multicam with brand new plate carriers, all looking high speed, and they've all got their rifles and their pistols because they all want to be the guy from Call of Duty or whoever their pretend war hero is, and that guy
Mm-hmm.
carries a pistol, right?
Yeah,
And everybody looks at operators and they think they're super cool and high speed because, oh look, they all have rifles and pistols, and I'm like, yeah, but dude, that's cool, that's real cool. Play the game the way you want, but as you said, don't kid yourself into thinking it's super effective. Your draw on that one time was a 1 in a million happening, right? You
yeah,
happened to
yeah,
be flustered at the beginning of the season with a reload, and it was faster in that one instance for you to say, "I'm flustered, forget this, got you." Uh, 1 in a million, dude. You've played airsoft for 16 years, and you can still count on one hand, right? How many times you've needed
yeah.
to pull your pistol?
And if you ask me to go do that again exactly the same way, like I don't know that I necessarily could. Like, I mean, I would get flustered all the time, and yeah, I draw my sidearm all the time. But like the happenstance of being like, okay, I'm ready. I draw my sidearm, I shoot, and I hit that guy. Like that could easily have gone anyway, right? It
Well,
just
yeah,
happened to work out in that one instance. But you're right. Like it's 1 in a million. How many times have I used my sidearm this year? Like I don't think I have. Right?
yeah. Like, what condition is my sidearm in? Aside from the actually, it's an AAP I run as my sidearm now. Uh, Aside from that, I don't know how any of my pistols are doing, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
only have that one because the machine gun has an MED. It's 25 feet.
Yeah.
And I was running that last time.
Yeah, and it's so important, I think, when and this is, I think, coming back to the start, like this is why we've made so many episodes and so much content axed really on beginners, because there's so much out there. It's often very easy to lose sight of the stuff that actually matters and will help make your day more successful. Whether or not you have fun is certainly one thing, right? Like if you're going to rock an AK because you think it looks cool, like again, great, awesome, good for you. But what we hate to see is people wasting their time and wasting their money on things that don't actually help them, and in some cases may even hinder how much they're actually enjoying themselves on the field. Because nothing is more frustrating, when you go down that upgrade path that you were talking about, when you're spending 40 or 50 bucks to upgrade your barrel or your hot belt or whatever, like that's fine. But then you start dropping big boy money or big girl money on HPA, AEG, like gearbox upgrades and stuff, and it's not going the way you want. Nothing is more frustrating than that, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, like that makes sense. You want to get into the game and realize that you're into the game before you frustrate yourself to that point.
Yeah. And know what you want to get out of it. You made that point earlier too, and I think it's super important. Don't start right away, right? Like you need to think about how do you enjoy, and I think for you, you talked about this. The way that you enjoyed the game is definitely unique because you're a unique dude, but is very different to the way that I enjoy the game. And that's not right or wrong. It's a matter of fact, right? So whatever works for me may not necessarily work for you and vice versa.
Well, exactly. Like, but I've been able to take things from you guys and work them in, which is awesome, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having a different font of knowledge, like you mentioned, and we discussed earlier, is the progress you've made since the Discord, right? Since you moved from the Newfoundland community to the bigger world and started talking to people all around and saw other angles of airsoft outside of YouTube, because YouTube can't and won't show you anything. It'll show you two things: useful, knowledgeable, excellent Storm Riders high quality airsoft content, and cheater headshot compilation videos, right? Uh,
Yes. And only those two things.
and only those two things. So unfortunately, there aren't a whole lot of useful uh, educational resources out there. You have a lot of people talking big, talking, bragging about their new stuff, doing reviews of stuff they got that week.
Mm-hmm.
Review a thing you haven't played with at 2 games. Call me then. But you don't have a whole lot of quality, like beginner, real, and I mean real beginner helpful content beyond where iPro and go play, right? There's no step from beginner to medium that's super helpful out there. It's sort of a slam your face in the wall until you get through sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's why I think there's so much import to these types of conversations where you can create mentorship in those players, right? Because it's one thing to tell them, it's like, guys, you got to push up. But if you legit don't know how to do that, then the best way for you to learn that is to say, oh, there's this guy. We've talked about this before. There's this guy. He seems to know what he's doing. Hey, buddy, can I go with you? Chances are that person is going to say, yep. Right. Or simultaneously, it's like, oh, that guy seems squared away. Hey, buddy, can you tell me about your chest rig, or what kind of BBs are you using, or whatever, to sort of grow that knowledge? Because you're right. Like in terms of content that will help that conversation, it's difficult to find the exact thing that will help you unless, shameless plug, you join the Discord, and then you can drop very specific cues to people about your specific situation, and then they can provide very specific feedback to you about what may or may not work, or what has or has not worked for them in the past, right? Which, again, coming full circle, is why I think we've seen sort of such an accelerated rate of growth in terms of kit discussion and movement amongst not just myself, but I think and all of us on the Discord are, because of the conversations that we're having, we're constantly now trying new things that we maybe had not considered in the past, right? How many people have looked at your kit and gone, oh, he only runs a belt kit, I should try that, right? Or
I
how
mean,
many people have looked at Chaz and said, oh, this is his iPro setup that he has, I should try doing that too, because that seems to be better, right?
well, I mean, like, yeah, you guys and Chaz. Chaz was also a huge part of this. Shout out to you, Chaz, of my switch to HPA, because he was running it so much and talking about it on the Discord, and I'm like, you know what? Let's give this a shot, bro. Like, because I needed. And you, how's your Kythera running? Is it running right? Can we talk about how cool HPA is right now? Or are you frustrated about this?
No, we're cool, man. We're cool.
Okay, so as you know, being a fellow HPA king, right, you get a snappier shot. And as a rifleman, that is, believe it or not, like super, super important. It's not as important like for a machine gunner, right? Because you're sitting out in the woods and your bursts are as long as the windup. But when you're squeezing off a lot of rounds really quick and you really want to get them down, you can't beat HPA for that.
Mm-hmm.
Or just your snap shooting, which is the lifeblood of the airsofters. You're ready up and you're snap shooting. HPA can lift bigger BBs more easily just because you can turn the reg up, as opposed to like an AEG, you'll have to tune your spring to the weight of your BB if you want to fire heavier BBs. It won't necessarily immediately keep you at like, if you go from shooting 2.5s at 350, if you switch to 32s, it isn't necessarily going to immediately go to 315 and leave you at 1.42 joules. You have to check that. You might have to change your spring. HPA, that's not as big of an issue. Make sure your barrel is properly volumed. I learned that is very important for HPA accuracy. This is all stuff that like in between audiobooks at work, I listen to the podcast, and sometimes I'll listen for days or weeks at a time, and I'll roll through it, and I'll pick up this information from you guys spread over like 4 or 5 episodes, and I'll be like, we should really put this all together in one place. And so I'm really glad I got
compile it. Yeah.
I mean, this is 3 years of your podcast that I'm trying to get across, at least the useful information stuff. And I hope that you and Pat soon get to go through the bingo, because I want to see the other side of that, right? Like you and I are going over the tech. I want to see 3 years of the podcast from your guys' perspective through the bingo, which I think is super cool. You have no idea how much I had on that bingo.
I have a little bit of sense, yeah. But I think you raise a good point. Like, I think there's so many different things that get brought up, and it's easy to we don't have a compilation of it. So I appreciate having the conversation that beginners and anyone really can listen and go like, these are the different points that we've made that are really important. And to your point about HPA, 100% agree. It's so snappy, it's wonderful, and with my Kythera in particular, that mechanical trigger, I die for it. I think it's so much fun, but I digress. I think, as we're talking about all of these kinds of things, there's no substitute for having access to people who can talk to you, experts who can talk to you about that. And again, I really want to plug the Discord for our listeners, because if you're ever in a situation with your airsoft where you don't know what to do, you can ask someone on the Discord, and they will in many cases drop anything they're doing and be like, hey, let's jump on a quick voice chat and let's see what we can do for you. Whether that's trying to fix, I remember very early conversations where with Ricardo, he had an AEP. He was trying to figure out what was going on with his battery. Turns out it was actually just soldered into the gun. Like, there was no connector. It was just soldered into it. Fair enough. And then, it was me and Chaz and him on a call trying to figure out, what's going on. And like, that's what you can get. And that enables you as a beginner, not just at airsoft, but beginner at the thing that you're trying to tackle, whether that's HPA upgrades, AEG upgrades, or whatever, to get the support that you need to give you the confidence that, yeah, I've done this right, or I can manage this with a little bit of help, from my friends, so to speak.
Well, exactly, because no matter how cool you think you are, there's an aspect of not just this sport, but of anything. But I'm going to say even just this sport of airsoft that you don't know anything about yet. You could be freaking Narvich Haven hanging out in the Evic store with like Dutch the Hooligan and Jet, because those are literally the 3 airsoft guys I know who I have talked to here, right? Or at Galactic Civil War. And you could have them in the Evic store, and they won't have all the information that you're going to get with the 30 regulars we have who play airsoft for weeks or months or years behind us, right? And there's somebody awake on there right now, because we are a global community. I promise you right now, Tolan's on there waiting for somebody to hop in voice chat so he can get in there and get after him, right? Right now, Frosty might be just waking up and checking it out. 4 a.m. tomorrow morning, I'm going to be waking up for work, and I'm going to see that Phil's online and they're doing whatever his thing is, and I can ask him about stuff there, right? Like,
yeah, exactly right.
There's somebody awake. There's somebody who knows what's going on. There's somebody who can help you there. And it's not just for you. Also, share this with your friends. Share the information out there, because just like sharing this podcast, like, this has been a huge step for me as an airsoft person, right? Like, this podcast, the Discord community, the Storm Riders, has helped me take leaps and bounds over what I ever would have done at CQB City in Stockton, right? I never would have gone to battle for LA if I wasn't meeting Chaz and Sam there, right? They're like, we're going. I'm like, that's only 6 hours. I'm going to go play with these dudes that I've been chatting with, right? I would not be
Mm-hmm.
going to Iron Horse if it weren't for the fact that you guys are going to be there. And that's going to change the way that I play Airsoft forever, right? That's going to change the future of my Airsoft game. And it's changing my future's future, right? Because I had one of our episodes, the Galactic Civil War episode, on in my car the other day. My daughter hopped in. She's like, Daddy, is this you talking on the radio? And I'm like, yeah, I was talking to this super cool dude in Canada about airsoft, right? And she's like, I want to listen to all this. And now my daughter's listening to your podcast, right? Getting
That's
ready.
awesome, dude.
She's getting ready for her first airsoft season next year. Like, we're deciding how she's going to want to go. And she's been lifting my air tank. And she's like, I think I can carry that in a backpack and stuff. And so the next generation even is being affected by the way that we're playing and discussing and creating the game now. And it's going to be the next generation of players, not just my daughter, but every new player out there who could use a little bit of help along the way. And you guys can reach out and help those people, or you can come to us on the Discord and we will help you with that. We want you to
Yeah.
be an airsofter. We want you to enjoy airsoft. We want airsoft to grow and be better. And for everybody, every clown under that circus tent that is airsoft, to have their own red nose to honk.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I couldn't have said it better. Well, Matt, thanks so much for being on, man. I love having these conversations. I can't plug the Discord any better than you just did. But the link is in the description, guys. Make sure you you join. And like Matt very eloquently put it, there's always help to be found there. If there's anything you want to talk about there, if you want to share pictures, everyone is always awake for one thing, but everyone is always game to see what you have to share about airsoft. So thanks so much for listening, guys. Thanks so much, Matt, for being here, and we'll talk to you next week.